But anyway, let's get into it. So, all right. So for you guys to understand this stuff, let's go ahead and go through this kind of from the beginning, okay? So here's Syria on the map, okay? And what you guys need to know is that prior to the end of 2024, let's just say December 2024, Syria was a member of what's called the Axis of Resistance, okay? So you have Iran over here, okay? And you have Iraq and you got Syria. And as you guys can see, since Iran and Israel are so far apart, the way that Iran would, fight Israel is they would basically have this this ring of fire around them, where these countries that are on their border were hostile. Okay, Lebanon, Syria, and then you got the Houthis down here, right? And then there's some militia forces as well in Iraq that oppose Israel, and then there's some that are with the West, right? Iraq's kind of the Wild West. But the point is that Iran would utilize its proxies to wage war against Israel, right? For many different reasons, right? The occupation of Palestinians, Western imperialism, all this shit, right? Intervention, creating wars, them attacking their neighbors, all these different reasons, right? So they've been at war for decades, right? This is why, your boy Netanyahu's been saying, oh yeah, they have nuclear weapons, Been doing that for a minute. But we're going to focus on Syria. So the former leader of Syria was this guy named Bashar al-Assad. Okay, he was a former politician, military officer, and dictator. Served as president of Syria from 2000 until his government was overthrown in 2024. Okay, after 13 years of civil war. Now, it's important for you guys to know that the Assad family ran Syria for like damn near 40 years. Okay, he was originally an eye doctor, and he never wanted to become leader, but his brother was killed. So since his brother was killed, he had to kind of inherit the political reins and take over Syria. And under his tenure, there was enormous amount of war, because what ended up happening, guys, was in 2010-ish, 2011-ish, the Arab Spring occurred. And during that period, many different Arab countries kind of rose up against their leaders. As you guys know, in the Arab world, I've talked about this before, but I'll say it again because I know we got a lot of new viewers. In the Arab world, pretty much every country is either a monarchy or a dictatorship. All right? I'll be honest with y'all, man. I'm an Arab myself. Like, these Arab niggas don't know how to follow directions. Okay, you gotta rule with an iron fist on these motherfuckers. It is what it is, okay? you guys know me, I'm not biased. I will tell y'all the truth. These niggas are hard-headed, okay? You gotta rule with a fucking iron fist. All right? So with that said, right, when the Arab Spring occurred in 2010, 2011-ish, in that area, it led to a civil war, right? And as I described to you guys before, within Syria, there's a lot of different sects. You got the Druze, you got the Bedouins, you got the Alawites, you got the, the Sunnis, the Shiites, all kinds of people, right? And Bashar al-Assad, I think he was, what is he? Is he a Bedouin? Forget what he is specifically. Alawite. Yeah, he's an Alawite. Okay. So anyway, all different types of sects all across Syria, right? And this obviously made it almost like a fucking perfect staging ground for a civil war, because Syria experienced a civil war on like a whole other level. Obviously, with the Arab Spring, a lot of countries had uprisings and political issues, but with Syria, since there were so many different sects, it created even more problems. And when they tried to protest and uprise or whatever, the Syrian government would fire on the protesters. This obviously led to a conflict that went for many years. There was sanctions, we bombed them, all kinds of shit. And a big reason too was because Bashar al-Assad was an active member of the Axis. And the way it worked with the Axis of Resistance, going back to the map here, was weapons and resources, okay, would flow from Iran through Iraq, through Syria, to get where? To Lebanon. Now, why is this important? Because Lebanon is where these guys are located, okay? Hezbollah. All right? And we've talked about Hezbollah quite a bit. But basically, they're a militia group, well, damn near full-on military in Lebanon, okay? And I think it's important for you guys to understand that these guys operate outside of the Lebanese army, okay? So Hezbollah is a Lebanese Shia Islamist political party and paramilitary group. Hezbollah's paramilitary wing is the Jihad Council, and his political wing is the Loyalty to Resistance Bloc. Okay, Hezbollah was founded in 1982 by Lebanese clerics in response to the Israeli invasion of Lebanon. Inspired by the Iranian Revolution of 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini's model for Islamic governance. And they established strong ties So basically, these guys were created when Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982. Okay? And then they got put as a terrorist organization alongside Hamas in 1997 by Madeleine Albright. And if you're wondering, yes, Madeleine Albright was, but I digress. So they were named as a foreign terrorist organization. But it's important for you guys to know that Hezbollah operates outside of the Lebanese army. Okay? Two completely different factions almost. Now, Hezbollah is more of a resistance group, okay, against Israel. And they are the main, think of them as like the main tool in Iran's battle against Israel, okay? Hezbollah. So it's imperative for Iran to get their supplies and get their stuff through so that these items can reach Hezbollah here in Lebanon, who are, shooting the rockets and, getting in armed conflicts with Israel. Hezbollah by far has had the most run-ins with the IDF. They fought in 2006, they fought in the 80s, they fought just recently, which we're going to talk about. Now, after October 7th happened, okay, October 7th happens 2023. Fast forward roughly into the end of 2024. After Israel completes their ground campaign in Gaza, okay, they begin the invasion of Lebanon into southern Lebanon, all right? And what ends up happening is there were weeks of fighting between the Israelis and Hezbollah, okay? And the purpose for this invasion, for the Israelis' perspective, the objective was to get rid of the Hezbollah strength and power in southern Lebanon, because from southern Lebanon, they were shooting rockets into Israel. And this was creating a lot of problems for Israel because Haifa and all these other areas were being evacuated. Something like 60,000 Israelis were displaced because after October 7th happened, every day after October 7th, Hezbollah would launch rockets into northern Israel. And they did this from a military strategic perspective because they wanted to draw IDF forces out of Gaza to force them on their northern front, okay? And we all know, well, some of you might know this, anyone that's in the military understands that fighting a war on two fronts is very bad, okay? So this was a strategic move by Hezbollah to weaken IDF forces as they went into Gaza. So they couldn't send the full force, full might of the IDF into Gaza. So once, and it slowed down their operations. So once the IDF finished up in Rafah, right, and killed a guy named Yahya Sinwar, this dude right here. And they kind of got him on accident. They killed him in October, right? But I always use this as the kind of the as the marker because shortly after killing him, they began the invasion of Lebanon. This guy was the head of Hamas, okay? After they killed Ismail Haniyeh. So anyway, so after they wrapped up their campaign in Rafah, they headed north and did a ground invasion into Lebanon, okay? And while they went in and did this ground invasion into Lebanon, they launched a pager attack and they killed this guy, Hassan Nasrallah, okay? Now, this is all very important. You guys should know these names because these are all very influential people in this conflict. And Hassan Nasrallah was the head of Hezbollah, okay? So timeline. October 7th happens. October 7th, 2023. The IDF goes into Gaza, right? After about a year or so, roughly end of 2024, they go into Lebanon. The purpose of going into Lebanon was to destabilize Hezbollah and get them to stop bombing Israel, northern Israel, because they had to evacuate 60,000 people. And the reason why this is important is because Hezbollah is armed and supported by Iran. But for Iran to be able to support and arm Hezbollah, they must move those weapons and move these supplies through Syria. Okay? Now, this is where Bashar al-Assad came in from before, who I was showing you guys. Okay, he was a member of the Axis of Resistance and obviously was being supported by Iran and the Russians. Okay, so after the Israelis conducted their pager attack, after the Israelis were able to successfully assassinate Hassan Nasrallah, there was a ceasefire. This ceasefire is pivotal because after the IDF coordinated a ceasefire with the Hezbollah, what happened was this opened up the gates for Syria to be taken over. Very important, chat, that you guys understand this, okay? That's why I'm giving you guys all this background so this all makes sense. So once they went ahead and conducted the ceasefire, rebel groups led by your boy right here, Ahmed al-Shara, okay, rebel groups, HCS, I think it's called HTS or whatever, okay, that he led. He was a former Al-Qaeda member. Rebel groups in Syria who were in this Idlib province went into Aleppo. Once they went into Aleppo, they took it over within a day. Then they started working their way down to Damascus. Now, why is this important? Because Hezbollah was weakened, okay? Hamas was destroyed, and Hezbollah could not give the support to the Assad regime that they needed. And then on top of that, Assad, who had relied heavily upon Russian air power to stay in power during the Arab Spring, Russia has their hands full with Ukraine, okay? So it was just a matter of time. So Ahmed al-Shara makes his way down, again, this guy, he makes his way down to Damascus, and Bashar al-Assad flees. He runs from Syria, gets on a jet, flies to Russia. He's there now on asylum, okay? That's where Bashar al-Assad is with his family right now. Government collapses. While this was all going on, the pandemonium all across Syria, because it took about 3 weeks for Ahmed al-Shara and his squad to take over the country. During this 3 weeks, what ended up happening after the fact was the Israeli government, the IDF, moved further into southern Syria, right, and the Golan Heights, securing the Golan Heights even further, and they started bombing all the military infrastructure of the Syrian army. Why is this important? Because that leads us directly to today. When Israel bombed the hell out of Syria's military infrastructure as al-Shara was taking power, this weakened the government. They did this for two reasons. Number one, they don't trust al-Shara. And then number two, they bombed it because they wanted to ensure that they would never have the strength to be able to attack Israel. And they wanted to weaken and destabilize Syria because, as you guys know, Syria was a critical component to the acts of resistance because they would be the ones to supply Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a very capable military that was fighting the IDF and has won against the IDF on multiple occasions, by the way. They've fucked the IDF up multiple times. So they understood for them to weaken their primary adversary in the north, Hezbollah, they needed to destabilize Syria because Syria was the restocking, rearming proxy that was allowing Hezbollah to stay strong. Does that make sense, chat? So they needed to make sure that Syria is destabilized so that weapons can't flow through it into Lebanon. Now, when Ahmed al-Shara came into power, one of the things that he did was, well, actually, hold on. One of the things that he did was, sorry, wrong camera. One of the things that he did was that he basically said, hey, we want to make peace, we want to recognize Israel, etc. Right? And he kicked all the IRGC guys out from Syria. The IRGC is obviously the Iranian guard. The thing of it is like the Iranian special military, right, component. So he kicked them out of Syria, right? And he went ahead and hosted Donald Trump. Well, now I don't know if Trump went to Syria. I think he met him somewhere else. But regardless, the point is that Trump lifted the sanctions on Syria, which was a big deal, very big deal, because we had sanctions on Syria for a very long time because of their association with the Axis of Resistance in Iran. So once we lifted the sanctions, this was a very important step towards diplomacy, right? Very important step. And also, no one talks about this, but I'm confident, though Jolani didn't admit this outwardly, he allowed the Israelis to utilize Syrian airspace to conduct Operation Rising Lions. As you guys know, right, going back here to Israel needed to be able to get into Iran or close to it to be able to hit the targets that they wanted to. When Syria fell, this allowed it where the Israeli Air Force would be able to utilize Syrian airspace to get in. Now, obviously, this isn't publicly known for obvious reasons, but I'm pretty certain that Jolani, aka al-Shara, allowed the Israelis to utilize the airspace to get to Iran to conduct Operation Rising Lions. And that was the operation that was conducted in mid-June, if you guys remember, where they bombed several nuclear facilities, assassinated scientists, everything else like that. It was a very complex operation where they had Mossad agents in Iran destroying missile defense capability, air defense capabilities, jamming radars, assassinating people, all this shit. And it was all done through a complex operation. And a part of that was critical was the Israeli Air Force coming in and shooting and attacking these strategic sites, and they had to utilize Syrian airspace to do that. okay? And we know this because some fuel tanks were dropped in Syria and found in Syria and also in Iraq. So we know that Syrian airspace was utilized, okay, during the Operation Rising Lions. Obviously, it was a failure. They didn't get what they hoped, which was a regime change, but that's a whole other conversation. But regardless, sticking to Syria, so Jolani basically was trying to make good with the Israelis, right? And this was a big part of the reason why he was able to get the sanctions lifted against him. But now we see that Israel is taking this this niceness for weakness, and they're attacking Syria. And they're saying, hey, look, we don't want you guys in southern Syria, which obviously is wildly invasive to them and disrupts their sovereignty, because they want to be able to have control of this southern area, because the Golan Heights they occupy and they want to move further in. And they're using the Druze as an excuse for the Greater Israel Project. Okay? That's the bottom line here. They're never going to admit it, but that's what it really is. What Israel's real intention here, guys, is they're going to use the Druze, okay, and this whole concept of, oh, we need a secure border to our north and to Syria south. They're going to use that as the excuse to conduct warfare and weaken Syria even further. And the thing is that Jolani can't really fight back, because remember how I told you guys, right when they took power, when Jolani took power, aka Ahmed al-Shar, when they took power, the first thing that Israel did was destroy their entire military infrastructure before the new interim government can come in and take over and get control of these resources. So they're extremely weak and they can't retaliate. So basically, Syria is going to have to allow whatever happens to happen, because they can't even fight back. I mean, they're so fucking cucked. Al-Shara couldn't even condemn the Israeli government for attacking his country. You guys saw they attacked downtown right next to the presidential palace. Okay? Now, there's some rumors out there that the Israelis warned him and told him, hey, we're going to bomb you, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. But regardless, it's still a very weak showing by the new government, okay, that this is happening. Especially, and the reason why I'm mad, okay, you guys are probably wondering, Myron, well, why do you care so much? The reason why I care is because Trump spent like a week or two in the Middle East forging diplomacy, and one of the key things he did was lifting the sanctions off of Syria. So for Israel to come in and bomb them, it undermines everything that we've worked for diplomacy. And then Marco Rubio came out and said, yo, we didn't even know this was happening, really. Now, what that really means is, right, is more than likely the Israelis acted, did this, and then told the United States after the fact, or told them as they were doing it, okay? But the reason why I know that this isn't really good for us is because Trump went himself and met with Jolani and shook hands with him and basically had, lifted the sanctions. Now, when it comes to Iran, because I know some people are going to push back on me and say, oh, well, Myron, hold on, bro. They tried to have diplomacy with Iran, right? And they attacked them anyway. Well, the difference between Iran and Syria is that we backed Jolani. That is the difference, chat, okay? We backed Jolani to take power from Assad, okay? We backed them because as soon as that ceasefire happened with the Israelis and Hezbollah, literally the next day, guys, within 24 hours, al-Shara activated his rebel groups and they went into Aleppo and took it over, and then quickly went into Damascus and took it over. Within 3 weeks, Syria fell and Bashar al-Assad was run out of there. So that's the difference here. We backed them to get that power. So the Israelis basically are subverting our diplomacy. And the reason why this is a problem is because, as usual, the Israelis will start a conflict, engage in conflict, and then when things get hot, we have to come in and clean up. Or the other side, let's say we don't come in and clean up, we have to continue to give them money so that they can keep doing what they're doing. So either way, we've put the bill. Okay? And the reason why they engage in such reckless foreign policy is because they know that we're going to back them. Our unwavering support is the reason why they behave the way that they do. Now, what this might do is it might embolden Jolani to align back with the axis of resistance, take him from our influence, and then now we have another enemy in the Middle East. Why? Because the Israelis want to fucking bomb and attack everybody. Because for the Israelis, the only thing they care about is having a hegemony in the Middle East and taking over as much land as possible and expanding the Greater Israel Project. Make no mistake about it, that is the goal. And then on top of that, not only do they want to expand, but Netanyahu is trying to keep himself from going to jail. These corruption charges that he's facing, guys, carry something like 10 years in prison. Okay? So he has multiple things going on. Number one, he's trying to stave off the political prosecution that he's dealing with, right? Then on the other end, he's trying to stay out of the ICC jail, right? Because as you guys know, he's been indicted by the International Criminal Court, right? The ICC for war crimes. Then he's trying to also expand Israel. So everything he's doing, right, as much as he won't admit it, is for his own political survival, okay? And expanding Israel at the same time. He's keeping himself out of jail while simultaneously using the excuse of, I'm keeping Israel safe, and I'm the only prime minister that can do it. So a couple of things can happen here, right? Like I said, it could totally sever what we work towards. It could even get Jolani pulled back into the axis of resistance, fall under Iranian influence again, because they see that they can't trust the Israelis. And it would fuck up all the work that we have, that we've done. And here I wrote a tweet about it. In June 2025, President Trump visited the Middle East and on June 30th lifted sanctions against Syria. This was a significant step towards resolving long-standing tensions. However, less than a month later, on July 16, 2025, Israel began airstrikes on Damascus, claiming the action was to protect minority groups such as the Druze. This story is unlikely to be covered extensively in mainstream media, American media. Why does this matter? It proves my point. Israel faces little accountability for initiating conflicts with its neighbors, largely due to unwavering U.S. support. This persists even when such actions undermine American diplomatic efforts, like what I told you guys before. For example, some allege that the U.S. overlooks controversial issues such as the Epstein case to maintain its alliance with Israel. And I do think that's a big part of the reason why the documents still aren't classified. Similarly, these attacks subvert American diplomacy. The worst part? America bears the financial diplomatic burden of mitigating the consequences of Israel's reckless foreign policy after it burns bridges America worked to build. Our greatest ally does not always align with U.S. interests, and they don't care. That's another big one. They basically shoot first, ask questions later. That's how the Israelis move. And then we got to come in and clean up all the fucking bullshit, chat. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. This could obviously blow over and maybe a ceasefire will come into play like they tried earlier, or it could launch us into a greater conflict. But either way, it's not good.